Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to share with you one of the fastest ways I've ever found to improve your mental health and your emotional state, and it's a really quick way to figure out how to break out of a negative emotional state pretty much whenever you want. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Hicks. I'm a mental health coach. I help people overcome depression and anxiety. I was dealing with some severe mental health issues way back when, and therapy, medication, counseling, hospitalization, none of that really worked well for me. So I had to figure out, how do I learn how to train my brain to feel how I want to feel and think how I want to think. And that's why I make these videos, is I want you to have the mental health that you deserve. So one aspect that I have found incredibly helpful for people in improving their mental health. Well, let me back up for 1 second. So there are three key elements that create any emotional state. And so whenever I'm helping a client go through the process of getting rid of the negative state that they don't want to feel on a regular basis and start feeling the thing that they do want to feel, what we have to do is deconstruct what are the three components that cause them to feel what they don't want to feel, and what are the three components that cause them to feel what they do want to feel. So we call the first one your suffering state, and then the second one we call your target state. So for example, like if you're watching this video right now, chances are there's an emotion that you're feeling in your life right now that you don't want to be feeling as much. So it could be stressed out, could be anxious, could be depressed, could be whatever, right? So just kind of think, like, what is that? And then ask yourself, what would be the emotion or feeling you would love to have a whole lot more of the time? All right, like if you could have a particular emotion or feeling the majority of the time, what would that be? For most people, they'd say something like happiness or confidence, okay, something like that. So what we want to do then is figure out what triggers feeling depressed and anxious. And I don't mean trigger in the typical way of like, oh, well, my partner triggers me. I mean, triggers it as in like what starts the sequence? Like what is the actual what are the components of the pattern that make you feel anxious or depressed? Okay, because an emotion is not something that happens to you, it's something that you do. It's just that it's something that most of us are doing unconsciously. It's kind of like when you're driving your car. You ever drive your car and you zone out a little bit and you drift off, and then you get to your destination and you're like, what the hell, I don't even remember getting here. Well, that's kind of what our daily life is like, right? Where our mind and our emotions are actually within our control. It's just that we go unconscious with it. We zone out. And when we zone out and we forget that we're in control, then the unconscious mind comes in. Okay, so where is this all leading to? Well, here's what I want you to see, because this will empower you a lot. There's one thing you can do to change your emotional state very powerfully, and that is figure out what the particular language patterns are that you say to yourself when you are feeling your suffering state. So the term we use for this is an incantation. Okay, you may have heard that somewhere else before. So an incantation is just a language pattern that you repeat on an ongoing basis. And the problem with it is that when it's repeated, we believe it. So a key concept that I've learned over the years is that any thought that we think enough times will become believed. We'll actually believe it. If you repeat it enough times, it'll become believed in the nervous system. Okay, so like for example, like let's say somebody whispered in your ear all day, like, you're a loser. If they said you're a loser over and over again in your ear, at first you'd be like, what? No, I'm not. But if they kept saying it and saying it and saying it 1,000 times, your mind cannot help but start to imagine that maybe that's the case and start to like believe it, right? You hypnotize yourself essentially. So if you're feeling, let's say, anxious on a regular basis, there is a hypnosis that you're putting yourself in that you might not even be aware of, okay? And I'll tell you what some of the most common ones are can't is the big one. Like, I can't do this, I can't do that. Another common one is like why. So like, why can't I? Or why do they always do this? Or why can I never figure this out? Okay, something like that. Those are common ones. So you want to remember a time when you felt anxious or you felt this particular emotional state that bothered you, number one. And then number two, ask yourself, what was it that I was telling myself in that moment? Okay, and for most people, it's usually like 3 to 5 things. Write those down and then ask yourself, are these the things that I tend to think to myself every time I'm feeling anxious? And you're going to find that at least 2 or 3 of those are probably showing up like every single time. And you'll be amazed that if you just simply start developing the habit of not engaging in that particular phrase, you will reduce your anxiety level. Because essentially what you're doing is like, think of like a tree, right? It's got all these branches. And imagine like if you could just cut off enough branches, eventually the tree dies. Well, the trunk of the tree is like anxiety or depression or whatever it is for you. And so one of those branches is that particular phrase, right? Or the word can't, or the word why, or whatever it is. So by you cutting that off, it's like you are getting that much closer to just, killing the whole thing, which is really powerful. Because problems need energy to grow. So when you cut off one of the avenues of how it gets its energy, it has less room to grow. It starts to shrink a little bit. So you want to identify what your incantations are, number one, and stop using those. Break that habit. And then the third thing you can do is develop positive incantations. Figure out what is it that you said to yourself in the past that made yourself feel confident or excited or grateful, right? Or whatever it was. And you can start to bring that into the present moment. And it won't feel automatic at first. It won't feel very genuine at first. But it's just because it needs time, it needs repetition, right? Your mind is going to be hypnotizing you with something and making you believe something. So it might as well be something that actually is empowering and is probably a better representation of the truth than whatever BS, the fear center of your brain keeps populating on a regular basis. So figure out what your incantations are and use them to your advantage. It will help you tremendously. I've seen it work very well for myself and for other people before. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and please engage with this video because it ends up getting out to somebody else who's in need of seeing it, which really helps. And I'm really grateful for your time, and I hope this really helps you. And I'll look forward to seeing you in another one soon. See ya.